Hello and welcome once again to Civil Engineering Today. I'm Cristina Fragoso, and we are brought to you by the Boston Society of Civil Engineers section. This is a very special show for us. It's actually our 10th anniversary show. Our first show was in July of 2006. So since it's such a special show, we have a special guest. I'd like to introduce Bill Lyons. He's the CEO and founder of Fort Hill Companies. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Cristina.
And he's also a chair for our Government Affairs Committee on the Boston Society of Civil Engineers. So he wears a lot of hats. And he's going to talk to us about a local project that's been going on for, at least the planning stages have been going on for a while.
Yeah, but probably decades at this point.
Decades.
The really intense part has been in the past 10 years or so.
Okay, we've had shows on planning, so we know decades is nothing when it comes to planning, especially in urban areas. But you brought a great video with us, so I guess we're going to watch the video first.
Sounds great.
All right, so if we can watch the video, it has some really good information, and then you'll get an idea of what we're talking about.
The Muddy River Project is the largest civil works project undertaken by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers New England District in the city of Boston. Many feel it's also the Army Corps of Engineers' most important project to have ever taken place within the city of Boston. The Muddy River is located central to the Emerald Necklace in the Fenway area of Boston. Within that geographic footprint, there are 12 schools and colleges, there's 6 hospitals and research institutions. It's a densely populated, heavily traveled area that, by the way, is also home to Fenway Park.
The Muddy River Project is a flood mitigation project.
There was a series of 3 events that caused more than $70 million in damage. It also prohibited vehicle and pedestrian access and shut down the MBTA.
The Muddy River Project, it's fixing this problem of choking down this historic river. We had to figure out a way to dewater the project area in order to complete the work.
And what we did was we installed 2 cofferdams. We put a cofferdam at our most southeasterly limit of work, and we put a second cofferdam upstream at roughly, let's say, the midpoint of the job. We were able to put the 2 cofferdams in. We created, so to speak, a bathtub. Then we went in and drained the bathtub, and we were able to reconstruct the river in the dry, which was ideal.
There's hundreds of existing trees that were called to remain on site. So installing a cofferdam system down the center of the river just wasn't feasible. That's one of the reasons we gravitated for the downstream half of the project to doing a bypass pump system.
We had an electric pump that was the primary. It was on a variable frequency drive. So the means and methods, it was almost like 2 different projects, how you had to attack it.
In addition to increasing the capacity of the Muddy River, there's traffic realignment components and significant utilities that had to be relocated in support of this project.
These are large trunk utilities that feed this area, namely Fenway Park and the hospital. So we needed to construct a culvert right through these. The traffic improvements have been a phenomenal aspect of this job. And when I have an abutter tell me that sirens are down in that area, and sirens are pretty much the 90% of the noise pollution in that area, that makes me feel good. It makes me feel that you're making a better city.
Most of our work has multiple stakeholders, but this project is unique because not only is the client consist of multiple stakeholders at the federal, state, and local level, but there's hospitals and universities and schools that are impacted, but there's also community-based organizations that are really passionate about restoring and maintaining the Emerald Necklace.
A good portion of it is right in the middle of a pseudo-rotary. There's no space, and because it's a daylighting project, we're constantly taking away from our laydown areas. So our project site was actually shrinking daily.
There is just tremendous amount of pedestrian and traffic volumes that need to be managed through this area. It's critical to get in and out of there and minimize the disturbance to the public.
That meant working Saturdays, that meant working 10-hour days. There was a real effort in order to get the job done.
So we move the traffic around, we complete the work, then we move the traffic back onto the completed work.
Safety is a core value here at Charter.
Our safety culture is continuous. We wake up the minute we get on the site, we live that culture.
Typically on our projects, when we think of safety, we're thinking about protection of the workforce within the constraints of a project footprint. Here on this project, we also had to really consider the pedestrians ranging from visitors to Fenway Park to students, folks going to work in the Longwood Medical Area, as well as a heavily traveled roadway system. Before Olmsted was a landscape architect, he really was an environmentalist, and he was able to blend these two facets together in a manner that had never been done before, to restore the Muddy River 120 years later so that it reflects his originally intended design is a source of tremendous personal satisfaction.
I started off at Charter as a co-op 5 years ago, and one of the first tasks that I was given was to go to the Boston Public Library and research this upcoming project that turned out to be the Muddy River Project.
To have an opportunity to run such a milestone project and to complete it in the manner we're going to, it really feels good.
Charter being awarded the Muddy River contract really represented the transition from our formative years as an emerging contractor to one gaining visibility for our ability to undertake multi-scope work with multiple stakeholders in challenging environments.
Well, that was a really interesting video, and as someone who was once a resident over there, I know about those floods. I've experienced them. So this was the main purpose was for flood control.
Yeah, the primary purpose of the project is to do flood control. There are a lot of other purposes for the project that are perhaps secondary for most people. One of the primary purposes is, of course, to restore Olmsted's vision for the Emerald Necklace, and that is a very important project for a number of reasons, but also to include improve water quality and to restore the riparian and aquatic habitat along the Muddy River as well.
Oh, no, the water quality is not potable water, I'm assuming. Is it more for the wildlife in the area that the quality is being improved, or?
Yeah, it's in part for the wildlife because there are fish in the river, but
That's
it's
true.
also to improve the quality of the water as it enters into the Charles River. We're all very aware that the Charles River has made tremendous strides in the past 3 decades in terms of its water quality, and siltation is one of the biggest hindrances of a good, healthy water quality. This project will reduce siltation and silt and sand in the water and therefore improve overall water quality, not just for the Muddy River, but for the Charles River as well.
Do you know if the city is, how are they controlling when they salt the roads, and how is that controlled exactly?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. One of the aspects of the project is to install what we in our industry call best management practices, which is how we treat our stormwater runoff. That involves the city being more conscious about the use of those kind of contaminants like salts and sands. But it also includes an improvement to the water quality before the water even reaches the Muddy River. So we're reducing all those contaminants in the catch basins before they actually get discharged into the riverine environment.
So that was in the early phases of the project? They
Yes.
designed for that with that in mind?
Yes, and so the BMP part is actually being undertaken by the city of Boston in the town of Brookline, independent from the project, but as in conjunction with the project.
Okay, and you mentioned earlier, who was co-funding the project. It was the city of Boston, the city of Brookline, and then you said someone else in the Army Corps of Engineers.
Sure, the Army Corps of Engineers is the biggest funder. They use.
Now, how did they get involved with a local park?
So the Corps of Engineers has jurisdiction over all waters of the United States, and the Muddy River being one of those waters of the United States. And there's funding provided by Congress called the Water Resources Development Act. That money is available to cities and towns like Boston to provide these types of projects. And that money was administered by the Corps of Engineers in this particular project.
Okay, see, isn't that interesting? See, I always
It
work
is.
with dirt and rocks, so I'm like, I had no idea the Army Corps was in charge of all bodies of water. But now that I think of it, yeah, every development or anything to do with water, they've been involved and they've been there at the meetings with the voice, which is a good thing. It's good to have one owner for everything like that.
It is.
And it was the town of Brookline also and the city of Boston?
That's correct. It was actually a co-project with CORE, the Department of Conservation and
And the Department of
Recreation, which
Conservation,
actually
okay.
owns the land.
Yes.
And then the City of Boston and the Town of Brookline, which are the two communities in which the project rests.
And I think that highlights, I mean, we saw in the video that they mentioned there was over $70 million worth of damage from the flood, and it shut down the T. And we've had shows, especially after last winter, well, not this past winter, the winter prior, what it's like what happens when a little branch of the T shuts down. It's just unbearable. So it's interesting to note that all these communities and, you know, voices got together and made sure this got done. Now, what phase is the project in at the moment?
So this is phase one of a multi-phase project. It ends well before the ComAv interchange.
Okay.
The next phase is supposed to take it up to the ComAv interchange and then out to the Charles River itself. It's quite costly, as you can imagine, and a big coalition got the project as far as it has. And really, the next phase needs to be funded, and that's what's holding it up.
Oh, okay, that's what's holding a lot of projects up,
Yes.
is always funding, always funding. Okay, now, you talked about the enhancement to the aquatic and reptilian. What are they doing? Are they putting new stock in there, or is that the plan, or they're just beefing up what's already there?
Well, the entire Emerald Necklace, as it was actually impeding the health of the ecosystem. And now that they're restoring it to Olmsted's vision, it's now much more supportive of the entire ecosystem. So their turtles are returning, the rabbits are returning, all the wildlife that originally lived there has been coming back, and they've really designed the project to accommodate the return of all the wildlife.
I'm going to actually give you witness to this, because my ex-neighbor from when I lived there, she still watches my dog whenever I go away, and I can tell you, the bunnies are out of control lately.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. They're absolutely everywhere. Even when I was walking, they'll walk right in front of you on the street.
Yeah,
And
no fear.
It's kind of funny, because when I was living there, geese was, you know, that was about all the wildlife you really saw, than the people that also had dogs. But so all those bunnies, that's all coming back, and they weren't put there. They just,
Nature worked its way.
nature worked its, so next we'll be seeing some hawks, more hawks in the area?
I would imagine that's kind of the way that the ecosystem works, right? So the rabbits will return, and their population will get out of control, and there'll be predators that come back to keep their population under control.
Do you know, I mean, I don't mean to throw you under the bus. This is kind of a detail probably you don't know about, but do you know if they thought about this or discussed the future? What would they do if hawks come back, and
I don't believe
coyotes?
I don't know. I'm not aware of that, but I know it was specifically the intent of the project to restore the ecosystem and the habitat so that it could flourish.
And it was interesting, you were telling me about Mr. Olmsted. I didn't know that this was one of his parks, but this was one of many parks for him and his company. I don't know if you want to give a little history of his
Sure.
vision and how important it is.
Yeah, sure. He really actually coined the phrase landscape architecture, and he viewed it as the integration of just not just civil works as we know it is today, but also fitting the natural form of the environment into a place where people could recreate and have the health benefits of being outside and in the environment. So he really saw the intersection of infrastructure and the environment in a way that nobody at his time in the late 1800s did, and created his own discipline, landscape architecture, which is pretty amazing.
But I think it's interesting that he considered sustainability. I mean, so long ago, you know, what a visionary, really.
Well ahead of his peers.
And his company is still around today?
I'm not sure if it exists as we would know it. I'm sure it got subsumed into some other company, but it survived him for many years, and his firm ended up doing some 5,000 projects like this.
Including Yosemite.
Including Yosemite and
that's-
Central Park in New York.
So it's funny, you know, with the history you learn about your own backyard when you really start paying attention to it. I had no idea that was one of his parks. And I was looking at, in the video, they showed the, I don't know, the people on the little canoe going up the river. So can you do that now? Or will you be able to? Because I have a kayak and I'm ready to go.
I suspect it's going to be allowed. Right now, they have some fencing around it so that it can get the landscaping all stabilized, but the intent is to take that fencing down and allow people to recreate there.
All right, okay, that's good to know. They'll have to put in a dock so we don't trample all the new riprap, you know?
Yes,
All the new
exactly.
riprap walls. How long is it from top to bottom? Do you know how long the length is?
Oh, it is, I believe, about a mile, but I would be remiss if I said it's quite that. I'm not sure, to be honest.
Okay, it's a decent amount to kayak back and forth a couple
Yes,
times.
it
That's
is.
good, some good exercise. So you brought us some slides of before and after. So we can put up the slide for before. You can see basically this is what it is now, and you'll see that the water portion of the slide is very, very small that's available in the land.
Right. So if you look on the west end of the slide, you'll see a big blob of green in between roads, and that effectively in the day was a parking area for the land. What's now the Landmark Center is once the Sears building.
Okay. There's still parking over there. That's going to be
All the parking is now gone. That's
Oh.
in the center where I can't.
the left side of the screen.
Yeah,
there?
the left side of the screen there. There's a big yellow tube. Those are the culverts that existed prior to the project's construction. And then you'll see on the right, you'll see there's a
Another
blue
culvert,
area,
yeah.
which
Oh,
is in between two culverts, and that's roughly a third of that entire length. And if you go to the
after slide.
after slide, which is what's there today, this project is being wrapped up this month, you'll note where the parking was on the left side of the project is now blue, and it's what's called daylighting of the river. They actually took the culverts out and restored to the river to Olmsted's vision. And on the right, you see that the blue extends from one end to the other, and the entire river in that area has been fully daylighted, and the habitat's been restored. They even put a little island in, you can see.
I see
Which is
that.
designed for the riparian habitat restoration. The turtles are there, and all the wetland habitat has been restored.
So that's amazing. And that you said that's wrapping up in how long? A couple months?
Supposed to be done at the end of this month.
The end
I
of
know
this
they're
month?
pushing really hard to get it done.
They're close to schedule, though. That's a big deal. To even be close is a big deal
That's
on
right.
a lot of projects. I mean, you know, it was mentioned in the video, but anyone from the area really knows that area is crowded. I
It
mean,
is.
there's the just, and like I said, I go there all the time to drop off my dog, and I saw the construction work going on, but I didn't feel the traffic. And I have to say kudos to you, because I know your company worked on that. But it was really amazing to me, you know, to see that the traffic, because usually even on the highways, one lane is down, it's like, oh God, you know, it's
Right.
add an extra 40 minutes, 50 minutes to your commute immediately. But it actually went very smoothly, so kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
And we wanted to talk to you. I know you've been involved with the Army Corps yourself as a vet. Can you tell us a little bit about that and your experiences and how you
Sure.
served?
So I've been in the Army Reserve now for 27 years and continue to serve today. And it's probably the most exciting thing I've ever done with my life. I've deployed 3 times to Kuwait and to Bosnia, and I actually landed in Bosnia on 9/11, and then subsequently was deployed to Iraq during the ground war. And just the exposure to the big wide world and other cultures and other people that it's afforded me has been a real joy. I mentioned to you that I'm both an intelligence officer and an Army Corps of Engineers officer, so I have had the good fortune of working on projects that are kind of at the intersection of intelligence and infrastructure. A lot of security projects, entry control gates, and projects like that. Very exciting projects.
I do think that's really interesting. I mean, especially like you said, when you're dealing with culture, I think a lot of times things that we take for granted that's normal for us, like garbage pickup, you know?
Right.
Clean water coming from a little faucet in your house. I mean, to a lot of people where you've been, that's not the norm.
No, in fact, it's a foreign concept, and so part of getting people to change is to expose them to new ideas and explain why those things are important in order to improve the public health.
I think that's very interesting, because you not only were like the intel officer, as you said, and an engineer, but you were also kind of like a little bit of a doctor. I mean, they don't really realize the health benefits they're going to get from caring about their infrastructure.
Right. Fresh water is the key to most public health, so both sanitation and fresh drinking water, which are very closely related, of course, are what the Corps of Engineers does every day.
Now, did you work with the other engineer? I know the Navy has a big engineering section as well. Did you guys all work together on projects, or how did that work?
Not when I'm in uniform, but one of the many things that my company does is work for the Corps of Engineers on overseas projects, and we frequently work with the Air Force's Center for Engineering and Construction and the Navy's Naval Facilities Command, both of which have roles in the infrastructure world for the military.
Now, how did you end up into engineering, falling into civil engineering? Did you just fall into it, or was it a family history, or how did it happen?
I did fall into it. It's kind of a story in and of itself.
That's why we love those, asking that question.
I
It's
went
always
to
interesting.
undergrad for electrical engineering, and when I graduated in 1990, there were just no jobs anywhere.
Really?
And I was actually pumping gas at a gas station, and a friend of my father's drove into the gas station. At the time, he was the deputy commissioner of Mass Highway, and he said, "Billy, why are you working at a gas station?" And I said, "Well, there's no jobs." And he said, "Come to my office on Tuesday. You'll start next week. You're going to be a civil engineer in our traffic group." And he said, "I'm pretty sure we have electricity in our traffic signals, so you'll fit right in."
Oh, yeah.
And that was the beginning of a very, very satisfying career.
Obviously, enough to start your own company. So, I mean, did you have a link you wanted to mention as far as if people just Google Muddy River Restoration, they'll find all the links they need, or is there a .gov site?
I don't have the link in front of me, but it's in Vimeo, and or you can go to the Muddy River.
It
Yeah,
says
go ahead.
Muddy River MAC? MMOC?
Yeah,
Is that?
MMOC is the management group that's actually overseeing
Okay.
the restoration project. So it's a not-for-profit that takes in all those groups that we talked about.
Okay, so Muddy River MMOC.org, and
Yeah.
that'll take you to all the links. Because I know there's meetings now. Is the public available? The meetings are available to the public to attend as well?
Yes, they
'Cause,
do have regular meetings.
They do. I know they have a lot of meetings, and people in the Fenway neighborhoods are pretty passionate about the area.
As they should be.
Yes, I remember when they were trying to do things with the Fenway, they're like, oh, I don't know, all the universities and the hospital, you're gonna have ambulances sitting in 2 hours of traffic, this is a bad idea. And then they're like, well, then we'll move the stadium. And you're like, no, we want the stadium to stay. I guess I'm pretty good at, having my cake and eating it too. But this is a very interesting project. Maybe when it's finished, we can do a revisit. Do you think you'll
Love
have
to.
another video? I
Yep.
mean, I thought the video was exceptional quality. That was done by the Charter Group.
Yes, Charter Construction, they're the general contractor.
I
They
think the
prepared that.
video was great. I would love to see this for more projects. We can use them here. It
Yes.
helps us with the show, helps people understand what's going on. So, well, I want to thank you again for joining us on our 10th anniversary
It's
show.
a real honor, I appreciate it.
All right, great. And, I don't think we have very much time, but I do want to plug our website for www.bsces. We're also a .org site, and if you go there, we have a calendar of events. The school year is over, but we do have some outreach events currently available to kids and coming up. I think we have the South End Festival, or the West End Festival in the North End coming up, strangely enough, the West End and the North End. But if you go there, you can get the details on that. And thanks, Bill, for joining us, and we'll see you again next month. Thank you.
Thank you very much.